Welcome to Horizons. It is so great to see all of you here. This is the first time that we are holding Horizons in Washington, D.C. We wanted to be here this year because of the historic levels of federal investment that are being made in our nation's infrastructure and communities, and because of the upcoming presidential election. Now, who would have known exactly what a time this would be, huh? Right? It's amazing that we are here in this moment. So, I'm also happy to be back in DC because this is a city that will always feel like home to me. I spent the first half of my career here, and like so many young workers who come to DC, I came here to change the world. All from my little cubicle on the 4th floor at the US Department of Labor. And in the 30 years since then, I think a lot has changed in our nation's education and workforce community that we should all feel proud of. But at the same time, when I reflect back, I worry that we haven't come far enough and that we haven't moved fast enough in our collective action. And in fact, as we saw in our opening video, I worry that we're losing ground. Why is this? I think the reason is that we have not been brave enough. Now, bravery isn't a topic that we talk a lot about as a field, and I think we should. I've been dwelling on this since March when I gave a keynote presentation, and in that talk I talked about the importance of developing intentional strategies for serving underrepresented populations such as Black learners and workers. And when I left the stage, several audience members came up to me and thanked me for my bravery. And I thought, have we really gotten to the point that someone is considered brave for simply mentioning the issue of race? And I found that deeply troubling. And it led me to this bigger thought that it's a lack of bravery that is holding us back as a field. And I see 3 reasons for this. The first one is the fear of retribution. Now, I still remember an incident from middle school, and this is me back then. And on this particular day, I wasn't wearing my Def Leppard concert t-shirt to school, and instead I was wearing this lovely blazer. But nevertheless, there was a teacher that I had who would relentlessly ridicule one of my classmates, a girl who was navigating some learning disabilities who would often just end up in tears, feeling humiliated in class. And so I took it upon myself to report the teacher to the principal. In the end, the teacher was reprimanded, he received a written warning, and thankfully, the classroom situation improved. Great news. Until I got my report card. And even though I had earned an A average in the class, the teacher had given me a D+. So I took away 2 important life lessons from this moment. First is that it's always important to fight for what's right. And second, that power dynamics are real. Now, as leaders, we all have to navigate power dynamics with our bosses or our boards or our funders. We're often afraid to push back on an idea or to take a bold stand on an issue, especially when the stakes are way higher than an undeserved D+ in middle school. We're concerned about our jobs and our reputations and funding for our organization. We're afraid of what might happen. The second thing holding us back, right, am I right to say that there is no better place than Washington, D.C. to see how power dynamics can distort leadership behavior? The second thing holding us back from being brave is a fear of change. A little while ago, I was on a panel, and someone asked me if I felt our workforce system was more learner-centered or more employer-centered. And my response was actually that our system is too system-centered, that we spend way too much time protecting and defending the status quo. I'll give the example of the current legislative proposal to expand Pell Grants to include high-quality short-term credentials. Short-term Pell would enable workers to access the training they need to acquire better-paying jobs. It has strong bipartisan support, but yet it has failed to be enacted. Opponents of this change argue that we don't know how quality will be determined. But by enacting this change, we would actually have the opportunity to resolve the issue of quality. Instead, we're sticking with an imperfect status quo. And as a result, millions of workers and learners are being left behind right now by our current inequitable system. The third thing holding us back as a field is the fear of the unknown. Last year at Horizons, I made the case that AI was going to change everything in our collective wheelhouse, the way people learn, the jobs we get, the work we do, and how we're going to acquire skills to stay relevant. And in the years since then, we've seen that a lot of that is coming true. But the education and workforce systems, by and large, have been slow to react. And there's a lot of great reasons for that, including a lack of resources. But I would argue that bravery is coming into play here as well. The fear to engage in something we don't fully understand, the fear of the unknown. We all have to engage in the unknown, and this really makes me think of something that I heard from Wendell Wallach. He is an AI ethicist from Yale who wrote one of the very first textbooks on AI. And he says that we are still such mysteries to ourselves that until we come to better understand who we are, we will not be able to fully comprehend and manage the impact of AI. Now, that is not a small task, to better understand who we are and to engage in something when the issue just may feel too big. But that's what we have to do. Even if we are not technology experts, we need to be engaging in these conversations, even when we fear it. So all of us as leaders need to engage in the unknown. Whenever we decide to put a stake in the ground, not knowing what the future is going to hold. At JFF, we did that last year when we rolled out our new North Star. And that started for us with a deep belief that ultimately what workers and learners care about is a quality job. Jobs that compensate fairly, jobs that provide structure, that provide opportunity for workers and provide workers with agency. But there are millions of adult workers in the US who are shut out of quality jobs because of systemic barriers. Anyone with less than a 4-year degree, most people of color, most women, and people with criminal records. So all told, that is 130 million adults in the US who are shut out of quality jobs. 38 million of those workers who face systemic barriers are fortunate enough to work in quality jobs today. But that leaves about 100 million who don't. So we want to double that 38 million number. And that is our new North Star. By 2033, 75 million people facing systemic barriers to advancement will work in quality jobs. And we want you, all of you, to join us in this effort. Now, we may have different opinions on the roles of the public and private and nonprofit sectors, on the role of organized labor, the role of technology. We may be coming at this from different points of reference. It might be climate, or racial equity, or economic development. But there's a common denominator, and that is that 2,000 of us here in this room share a belief that millions more US workers in quality jobs is a good thing. And that is the power of us. So this is an audacious vision. It's gonna require us to be brave, to step outside our comfort zone, and to be bigger and bolder. And we know that change takes courage. So how are we gonna pull this off? We have 4 drivers that we can commit to. And let's talk about the first. Create more quality jobs. One of the boldest efforts in quality job creation today is coming from an unlikely source, private equity. PE firms are generally known for cutting jobs, but the 2 biggest private equity firms in the world, KKR and Blackstone, are turning rank-and-file jobs into quality jobs. KKR is providing an ownership stake to employees in their large buyouts in the US. They have found that this helps workers feel more engaged, feel like they have a voice, and are less likely to leave the company. All great attributes of quality jobs. Back in May, Blackstone followed suit. They too are providing equity stakes to workers, including frontline workers, in their large buyouts. We think that private equity can create quality jobs for millions. And employee ownership is a brave first step, and we are hopeful for more. There's an even bigger effort afoot here in DC, with millions of jobs being created with the historic levels of federal investments that are being made through these pieces of legislation. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act. And over the next 2 days, you're going to get to hear from leaders who engaged in all of those efforts. We know that there is already a shortage of workers in many of these fields, whether it be semiconductors or robotics or construction or clean energy. And so we need the systems to be keeping pace and helping us and the employers find the skilled workers that they need. So that takes me to our second driver, the importance of preparing people for quality jobs. As I said, our systems aren't keeping pace now, and we need to have more innovative solutions that are learner-centered and employer-driven. I'll give you an example of a great program that fits all those categories. It's called Pursuit, and it is based in New York City. I think they're here with us today. Now, Pursuit trains workers for quality jobs as software engineers. Folks who enter their program have an average starting salary of $18,000 a year, and their graduates earn an average of $90,000 a year. But there was a problem. Pursuit's program didn't conform with the New York State Department of Education's requirements for schools. So the state actually threatened to hit Pursuit with a cease and desist order and threatened criminal prosecution if they didn't comply. One of the reasons for this is that their curriculum changes constantly to meet the needs of employers, which is a great feature. So thankfully, Pursuit didn't give up. And after some more discussions, the Department of Education stepped back, and instead, the State Department of Labor certified Pursuit as an apprenticeship program. Another great example of brave leadership comes from Charleston, South Carolina, where a legacy of slavery and racism has contributed to persistent inequalities. And I'll give just one data point on that fact. One is that the average white household income in Charleston is 89% higher than that of black households, almost double. But yet, the state's attorney general sent a letter to employers in the state urging them to halt their DEI hiring practices or else face legal consequences. Thankfully, this group didn't give up. So this threatened the work of the Charleston Chamber of Commerce Foundation's Low Country Career Collaborative. It has funding from the U.S. Department of Commerce Good Jobs Challenge, and they are working to train workers from underrepresented populations for quality jobs in the healthcare field. They could have been kind of scared off by this, but they weren't, and they are continuing to work with employers to get them the talent that they need. Once workers get the training they need, our third driver is to ensure that people can obtain quality jobs. A few months ago, I was fortunate enough to attend Walmart's Opportunity Summit here in DC, just a couple blocks away. And corporate leaders, high-level leaders from Walmart, McDonald's, Accenture, Verizon, many companies got up on stage and talked about the virtues of a skills-first approach to talent development. They are among a growing number of public and private sector employers who are removing degree requirements. Overall, we are in the very early innings of a skills-first long game, and it is terrific to see employers step up to bat in this way. But it's really only half the equation. We also need to be sure that workers and learners can find quality jobs. And enhanced navigational supports is particularly important for Gen Z. They want to know what programs and what experiences do employers value? What path is right for them, and how are they going to finance that path? So today, I am thrilled to announce the expansion of JFF's partnership with American Student Assistance with the launch of the ASA Center for Career Navigation at JFF. I also want to thank ASA for being our premier sponsor for Horizons, as well as our impact sponsors, Blackstone Charitable Foundation, Walmart.org, Workday, and LinkedIn, and all of our sponsors for their generous support. Their partnership and encouragement makes our North Star ambitions possible. Which brings me to our fourth and final driver, which is to mobilize America around quality jobs. Last year, we announced our new North Star at Horizons, and since then, we've heard from many of you and others around the country who are eager to get involved. So we are launching a new strategy, the 75 Million Network, that will enable employers, institutions, philanthropies, anyone with actions that will drive progress towards our North Star drivers. Create quality jobs, prepare people for quality jobs, ensure people can obtain quality jobs, and mobilize America around quality jobs. I hope that you will get engaged with us, and tomorrow morning you'll hear the details on how to do just that. So I have talked a lot about bravery this morning, and I'll admit that I haven't always been brave. I haven't always made the brave decision or taken the brave stand. But I also know that my position and my identity can at times make it easier for me to be brave than those who don't have the same privileges that I am fortunate to have. But the good news is that none of us have to do this alone. That is the power of us. The creativity and the passion of all of us in this room make us a force to be reckoned with. So when we come together across geographies, across organizations, across sectors, and across political parties, we can be unstoppable. The next 2 days are your time to dream and to create and to meet new allies. So let's be brave. Let's put our fears aside and see what's possible. Because that is what Horizons is all about. Dreaming big and bringing those dreams to life. Thank you all for being part of it.